I am blind in one eye. Every day was spent in mutual terror with my husband. He would go to brothels to drown his sorrows. I would go home and hire 2 male courtesans to revel in pleasure every night. He personally painted erotic illustrations of me and circulated them across the capital. I countered by writing and distributing a novel about his secret same-sex affairs. I gave them away for free. He smashed my mother's heirloom. I burned down the Xie family ancestral shrine. In the end, he collapsed and cursed me as a blind lunatic. I also lost control and called him a hypocrite full of lies. We looked at each other with pure hatred. But on the day the rebels invaded the city, he who hated me to the bone actually shielded me with his body. He let a sharp spear pierce his chest. Before dying, he said to me, "Mingyu, I have repaid the debt of this life. If there is an afterlife, I hope you will no longer stand in the way of my marriage to Xie Chengfeng. If there is an afterlife, I will not only continue to block your marriage, but I will also kill Yi Zhen right in front of you. 1,000 cuts until nothing but dust remains." Xie Chengfeng was so enraged that he gasped his last breath, his eyes filled with hatred. I was also discovered by the rebels and struck by 1,000 arrows. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day Xie Chengfeng came to ask for the hand of a Yi daughter. As soon as I opened my eyes, I met Xie Chengfeng's gaze. Gone was the youthful innocence in his eyes, replaced by the cunning and ruthlessness of a powerful official. Almost instantly I knew he had been reborn just like me. He seemed to notice the change in me too. Xie is willing to offer 100 Xie family storefronts and 10,000 taels of gold to take the second daughter of the Yi family, Yi Zhen, as his wife. Everyone thought Xie Chengfeng would marry me, including myself. In my past life, I furiously questioned Xie Chengfeng on the street, telling him that if he didn't give me an explanation, I would stir up a storm in the capital, making sure everyone knew that Yi Zhen was a harlot who stole her own sister's fiancé. I didn't expect that the madman Xie Chengfeng would have his steward tell everyone at the Yi estate gates the very next day. My master has been fond of the second Miss Yi since childhood, and now the two are already betrothed. Please, eldest Miss Yi, stop pestering the Xie family. After that day, I became the biggest laughingstock in the capital. They all mocked me for being half-blind, yet still harboring delusions of marrying the capital's rising star, Xie Chengfeng. Even the brothels were singing, "The eldest daughter of the Yi family lacks shame, has no sense of gratitude, and deserved to have her eye pecked out." Xie Chengfeng knew how humiliating my life was back then, so he was certain I wouldn't dare make a scene again. And indeed, I didn't dare, so this time, I only grabbed Xie Chengfeng's sleeve at the street corner and asked him one thing. "Xie Chengfeng, if you marry Yi Zhen, then what about my eye? You always loved money the most. I'll compensate you. Is 100 taels of gold enough?" Looking at his scornful expression, my heart grew cold, inch by inch. I lost my eye when I was 13. Back then, I had just been brought back to the Yi residence and was desperate to fit in with the young masters and ladies of the capital, but they looked down on me for coming from the countryside, constantly mocking me and ostracizing me. Only Xie Chengfeng was different. It wasn't that he was particularly kind to me, but rather that he never bullied me. So, when the eagle he raised suddenly turned on its master and dove from the sky to peck at him, I didn't hesitate at all. I rushed over and shielded him with my body. That day, he only suffered some scrapes, while I had an eye pecked blind by the eagle. The teenage Xie Chengfeng looked at my wretched state, crying until his eyes were red and swollen, vowing to marry me and protect me for the rest of his life. Yet later on, he was the one who bullied me the worst. Since that is the case, there is nothing left for me to say. Fine. Seeing my tears, a flash of pity crossed Xie Chengfeng's face. "Mingyu, as long as you behave yourself in this life and stop standing in the way of Zhenzhen and me, once Shenzhen gives birth to a legitimate eldest son, I will take you as a concubine. I'll ensure you have something to rely on for the rest of your life." Hearing those words of charity, the last shred of attachment I had for him vanished completely. "Do you really think you're such a catch? Short and ugly? I'd rather marry a cripple than marry you. That's still better than you, an old withered blind woman, still acting like a young girl." Although we parted on bad terms again, once I returned to the Yi estate, I couldn't afford to be sad. I hurried straight to my father's study. To my surprise, I ran into my mother on the way. She was directing the servants, hauling boxes out of my storage room one after another. Those were the dowry gifts she had prepared for me when I was born. "Mingyu Zhenzhen is an adopted daughter. Mother is worried she'll be bullied when she arrives at the Xie family. That is why I've taken from your dowry. As you wish." I had long since grown accustomed to my mother's partiality. Ever since I was brought back to the Yi estate, she always felt she owed Yi Zhen too much. She had never once felt sorry for me. What are you here for? Father Yi asked. Father, your daughter is willing to marry into the Xiao family to bring them luck. I mentioned the marriage to the Xiao family to you before. Weren't you unwilling? A month ago, old General Xue announced that he was seeking a wife for his only son, Xue Changzhao. Marrying him should have been an excellent match, but the noble ladies of the capital avoided him like the plague, because a year ago, on the battlefield, Xue Changzhao was severely wounded and left a cripple. No one was willing to push their own daughter into a pit of fire, except for my father. Back then, to avoid the marriage, I had even threatened to kill myself, but having been reborn, I regretted it. I kowtowed heavily to him. I said, daughter was ignorant back then. Only now do I understand father's careful planning. Father Yi glanced at me. Since you've come to your senses, then go. Many thanks, father. 3 days later, I obtained the marriage contract with Xue Changzhao, but unexpectedly, Xie Chengfeng began causing trouble again. Since it was decided, I obtained the marriage contract with Xue Changzhao, but unexpectedly, Xie Chengfeng began causing trouble and acting petty. Since it was decided, I couldn't afford to be too shabby. It seems I have to add a few more items to my dowry myself. I'm sorry. I didn't expect them to use such a crude way to abduct you. What do you want? I know your methods are ruthless and you hold a grudge for every slight. In this second life, I won't let you hurt Zhenjian ever again. Are you out of your mind? Mingyu, we were husband and wife in our past life after all. I won't go to extremes. Once Zhenjian and I are married, I will let you go. If you're insane, go see a doctor. I have no interest in you or Yi Zhen. I'm already engaged to Xue Changzhao, and in this life I just want nothing to do with you ever again. You've lied to me so many times before. Do you think I'd still fall for it now? But don't worry, I'll have people look after you. You won't be mistreated in the slightest. Young master, it is almost time for your meeting with the second Miss Yi. Xie Chengfeng stood up immediately upon hearing this. He said eagerly, quick, saddle the horses. Zhen hates people who aren't punctual. If I'm late, she'll throw a temper tantrum at me again. Xie Chengfeng, you devil. Xie Chengfeng, you old man blinded by lust. But in response, I only received a merciless slap across the face. What on earth did you say to Zhen? She would rather die than give up this marriage to you. Hemp. How ridiculous. I told you long ago that Yaijin has her eyes on the third prince. Xie Chengfeng, why is it that in this second life, you're still as dense as a pig? I've been locked up, so how could I have spoken to Yi Zhen? It is more likely that right after I asked to marry Zhenjian, you went and threatened her. Someone as vicious as you is perfectly capable of such things. I couldn't be bothered to argue and simply said, that old man, my father, is greedy for profit. Perhaps you can get to her through him. Once the deed is done, no one would dare say another word. Mingyu, what trick are you trying to pull now? Why help me? No tricks, I just want a decent meal in exchange. I'll have someone bring food. You stay here and behave yourself. After I marry Zhen, I will certainly compensate you well. Then he left as if fleeing. Afterwards, he found me a doctor and hired a cook, and sent a group of maids to take care of me. My food and clothing were of the finest quality, but the chain on my ankle was never removed. I wasn't in a hurry. I had already become betrothed to the Xue family. My father wouldn't just let me disappear. Perhaps it was to keep me in line. I waited until the very day of the wedding. Only then did my father's men appear by my side. Without a word, they broke the chains on my ankles and carried me back home on their backs. They cleaned me up, dressed me, and sent me off in the bridal sedan chair. Yi Zhen's sedan chair and mine left the Yi estate, one right after the other. Only after the ceremony, sitting on the wedding bed at the Xue residence, did I finally feel at ease. A faint smile curled at the corner of my lips. Yi Zhen was married off after all. I only wonder if she is the one sitting in that sedan chair. Over at the Xi Manor, Xie Chengfeng had never felt this happy in his life. Having lived 2 lifetimes, he had finally achieved his heart's desire. He had drunk quite a lot of wine. His friends were clamoring to tease the newlyweds. He chuckled and stopped them. Zhen is shy. Don't you dare tease her. If you want to tease someone, tease me instead. After finally managing to hold back his friends, he saw all the guests out and returned to the room full of anticipation. Looking at Yi Zhen sitting on the bed, Xie Chengfeng was so excited his hands were trembling. Zhen, you have no idea how long I've waited for this day. It is only by heaven's mercy that I have been able to marry you. He sat by the bed and held Yi Zhen's hand, taking the ceremonial rod nearby, and gently lifted the veil from her head. The moment the veil fell, Xie Chengfeng's expression turned to one of horror. Why is it you? The woman on the bed was not Yi Zhen, but Ruan Shu, the future star courtesan of the Chunfeng Pavilion. In his past life, Xie Chengfeng had also been one of her patrons. What set her apart from ordinary courtesans was that she was the daughter of an official. She had only been forced into the brothel after her father ran into trouble. At that moment, Ruan Shu looked at Xie Chengfeng, dazed and terrified. Where is this? An absurd thought rose from the depths of Xie Chengfeng's mind. Could everything Yi Mingyu said be true? No, that can't be. How could Yi Zhen do this to him? She was the one who loved following him around, calling him brother, and she'd always beam at me with her eyes curving into crescents. There must be some mistake somewhere. At this moment, he suddenly recalled every time Yi Zhen came looking for him. Yi Mingyu had begged him with teary eyes countless times. Brother Feng, Yi Zhen is always stealing my things. My father and mother. My brother. I have no one left but you. Can you please not let her take you away? His racing thoughts seemed to force him to face the truth now. Looking at the garish red double happiness characters in the room, he felt a sense of disorientation, as if he had returned to the day he married Yi Mingyu in his past life. Back then, she had also looked at him with that same bewildered, terrified expression, saying she didn't know why she was there. But at the time, he hadn't believed her at all. He had spent his nights in brothels to get back at her, all just to humiliate Yi Mingyu. Xie Chengfeng dared not think any further. Suddenly, he tasted copper in his throat and spat out a mouthful of blood. Ruan Shu screamed in terror. The servants, hearing the commotion, rushed in immediately. Seeing the sorry state Xie Chengfeng was in, they scrambled to help him up, but Xie Chengfeng shoved them aside. He stumbled toward the place where he had imprisoned Yi Mingyu. The room was already empty. He stood there, stunned. He suddenly remembered that back when he locked Yi Mingyu away, she had told him she was betrothed to Xue Changzhao. So, she hadn't been lying to him. But how could she marry someone else? She was supposed to be his wife. Xie Chengfeng's eyes turned bloodshot, and he sprinted toward the general's manor. The Xue manor was draped in red silk, with happiness characters plastered all over the rooms. Even the steps outside were completely covered in them. It appeared that old General Xue was very pleased with this match, but there wasn't a hint of a smile on the faces of the Xue manor servants. There was only uneasy apprehension. This was because after his paralysis, the young General Xue Changzhao had become erratic in temperament. No one knew what he would do the next second. I had, of course, heard rumors of Xue Changzhao's change in temperament. So, when I heard the door being pushed open, my heart began to flutter with anxiety. Then, the veil was lifted. The sudden influx of light made me instinctively squint. Once I saw the person before me clearly, I froze on the spot. Xue Changzhao is somewhat lean, but not frail. His dark hair falls loosely over his shoulders. The red robes he wears make his skin appear white as snow. His beautiful eyes are filled with a sense of desolation. There is not a glimmer of light to be found. Even so, he carries no air of defeat. Instead, he appears somewhat cold and striking. Noticing me looking at him, Xue Changzhao curls his lips into a self-deprecating smile, his voice turning sharp. What are you looking at? Want to mock me for being a cripple? As soon as he spoke, I realized what I was doing and shifted my gaze from his face, looking down at his legs. Xue Changzhao sits in a wheelchair. His upper body seems to be in good condition, with only his legs showing no movement at all. I let out a sigh of relief. Rumors from the outside said he was bedridden, finding it difficult even to turn over. But now it seems he can still take care of himself. You look so handsome, I was staring in awe. Flatterer. Seeing his ears flush red, I suddenly felt mischievous. I called out, "Husband, it is time to drink the wedding wine." Xue Changzhao pushes his wheelchair backward. He retreats a step, and I take a step forward until he is pressed against the wall. I seize the chance to press the wine cup into his hand, but the moment I touch his fingertips, he reacts violently and throws the cup away. The wine spills all over both of us. He doesn't like me. I lose all interest in teasing him further. I take off my soaked outer robe and throw it aside, then sit on the bed. Just as I take off my hairpins, preparing to lie down in my undergarments, I cast a glance at Xue Changzhao. He is still frozen in place. The wine didn't just spill on his body, it also drenched his hair, making him look quite pathetic. My heart softens immediately. I walk back over and say, "Let me help you change." Xue Changzhao says nothing. I assume he has agreed. But just as I undo his lapels, he seems to finally snap to his senses. He shoved me away violently. I lost my balance and fell right into his lap. Just then, our bedroom door was kicked wide open. Xie Chengfeng charged in from the outside, catching me straddling Xue Changzhao exactly like that. His eyes widened, and he asked with a trembling voice, "Mingyu, what on earth are you two doing?" I looked down and immediately blushed. The scene between Xue Changzhao and me looked intimate and suggestive. Ignoring the heat on my face, I answered following Xie Chengfeng's lead. Master Xi, what are you saying? You married your own bride today too. How could you not know what we're doing? The spring night is short, you know, isn't it? Mingyu, you don't have to say things to provoke me. I know marrying this cripple wasn't your intention. I'm taking you away right now. Stop talking such nonsense. I married Xue Changzhao of my own free will. We have already bowed to heaven and earth from this day on. He, Xue Changzhao, is my one and only husband. Mingyu, I already know I was wrong. You can hit me or curse me if you like, but don't gamble away the rest of your life. You love me, don't you? Stop being stubborn. Okay? What is this, by the look on your face? Could it be that the one you married today isn't Yi Zhen? Xie Chengfeng's face changed. Just as he was about to continue, I didn't care to listen anymore and turned on Xue Changzhao instead. Xie Changzhao, you were a general once. Xue Changzhao's eyes were filled with gloom. Are you just going to let this scoundrel break into our home and bully your wife? Xue Changzhao's eyes were filled with gloom, but he still turned and pulled the sword from the wall, holding it across his own neck. Master Xi, though, I may be a broken man now. The Xue family are founding heroes if I take my own life. The word will spread that it was you, Master Xi, who forced me to my death on my wedding night. Think about how many of your Xi family's 9 generations would have to be buried with me. Xie Chengfeng didn't dare to step forward again. Get out. The servants immediately swarmed in and dragged Xie Chengfeng out. The long sword in Xue Changzhao's hand clattered to the floor. I hurriedly stepped forward and shut the door tight, watching me close the door. A bit of the humiliation faded from Xue Changzhao's face, but his gloom only deepened. I, Xue Changzhao, will not drag a woman down with me. Today's wedding is null and void. You may leave on your own tomorrow. I will have my father clarify that you remain a maiden, so as not to hinder you from marrying your true love. I didn't speak. I bent down to pick up the sword lying on the floor, but I couldn't lift it. It was unbelievably heavy. The corners of Xue Changzhao's mouth curled up. That is my sword. It weighs 60 pounds. You won't be able to lift it. I gave up decisively, walked up to him, and began to undress him. Xue Changzhao panicked and tried to push me away again. I simply tore his lapels wide open, revealing a patch of snow-white skin. What are you doing? Obviously, I'm helping you change your clothes. I can't let you sleep all night in wet garments. Then why are you taking off your own clothes? Because you won't behave and keep pushing me. You can lift a 60-pound sword, so it hurts when you push me. I won't push you anymore. Put your clothes back on at once. Xue Changzhao. Xue Changzhao, marrying you was my own choice. I am half-blind, and you are crippled. We are a perfect match. My husband, please don't send me away, will you? Mingyu, stay. I have something to ask you. Father asked, so I told him the truth. The Yi family wanted to cling to the powerful, marrying me off in exchange for favors. Mingyu, you are a good child, but the Xue family cannot provide what your family desires. I fear you will only suffer grievances here in the future. Changzhao is a boy with a heavy heart. He has become temperamental since losing the use of his legs. The doctor said he still has a chance to recover, but he has given up. If there is any chance, please try to persuade him. He cannot spend his whole life this way. I ask you to put in the effort. My heart was moved, and I quickly helped him stand up. Get out. Earn back what you broke yourself. 5. Money. Look, he really is so handsome. My lady, this is Master Li Cheng, the best physician in the capital. Greetings, my lady. No need for formalities, Master Li. After that day, he became much more docile. The physician took his pulse, and he no longer resisted. He simply remained unwilling to get up and be seen. I was worried sick about it. My lady, there is an invitation for you. Suddenly, a maid came running over in a hurry. It was a calling card sent by Xie Chengfeng. I originally didn't want to see him, but he mentioned in the card that he knew a miracle doctor. I arranged to meet him in a private room at a restaurant. It has been a long time. Xie Chengfeng had lost a lot of weight. His eyes were dark and grim, his expression cold and solemn, and he seemed to be preoccupied with many things. Mingyu, I thought you would come to find me once you knew about the Ye family. I've been busy playing mind games with Xue Changzhao lately, and haven't had time for anything else. So that is it. Xie Chengfeng had spread the news that Yi Zhen had someone replace her in the marriage. Relying on memories from his past life, he was flourishing in his official career. Now that he had become a favorite of the emperor, the first thing he did after his promotion was to have my brother dismissed from his post. My father was implicated and demoted by one rank as well, but now I couldn't be bothered to waste words on him. Where is this miracle doctor you mentioned? He is waiting downstairs in the carriage. Why have you become so kind? Because we have the same goal. Xie Changzhao must recover so that when the rebels strike, there will be someone who can hold them back. Rest assured, I have no intention of harming Xue Changzhao. Only if he leads the troops against the rebels can I be ennobled and become a minister. Mingyu, do your eyes still hurt? In the end, we reached an agreement. I was just about to push his hand away when the door to the private room was suddenly kicked open. Xie Changzhao stared at us with eyes full of gloom. I thought he would be angry, but he didn't even glance at me. He turned and walked away. I hurriedly chased after him. Xie Changzhao, it's not what you think. Xie Changzhao, I swear. If I have even the slightest shred of affection for Xie Chengfeng, then may I meet a wretched end. Mingyu, it's natural for you to like him. He is a whole man. He is not like me. If you want to be with him, I will write you a letter of divorce when we return, but you are not allowed to curse yourself just to appease me. From that day on, Xie Changzhao began to willingly follow the doctor's rehabilitation. Spring turned to autumn, and a year passed by very quickly. On my birthday, Xie Changzhao said he wanted to give me a gift. He had a servant cover my eyes and brought me out into the courtyard. After a while, he had them untie the silk scarf from my eyes. I saw Xue Changzhao gritting his teeth, straining as he walked toward me. He placed the jade hairpin from his hand into my hair. Mingyu, do you like the birthday gift I got you? Yes, we lived peacefully like this for 3 years. During this time, Xie Chengfeng laid his plans in the imperial court. When the moment was right, he suddenly submitted a memorial, exposing the Prince of Nanping's intention to rebel. This forced the Prince of Nanping into an immediate uprising. The emperor needed to send troops to battle, but was troubled by a lack of capable generals. It was then that Xue Changzhao, clad in silver armor, volunteered for the mission. Only then did people realize that the young General Xue had long since recovered. Xie Changzhao was brave and a master of military strategy. The campaign went through the rebels like a hot knife through butter. But this success also owed much to the intelligence frequently sent by Xie Chengfeng. After his triumphant return, the emperor bestowed upon him a scroll of ironclad immunity. I was also granted the title of a first-rank noblewoman. Xie Chengfeng, meanwhile, became the most powerful figure below the chancellor. At the same time, my father's family, having backed the wrong side, was driven out of the capital shortly thereafter. It could be considered their due retribution. As for me, I have a new home now. Old General Xue treats me like his own daughter, and Xue Changzhao cherishes me as the apple of his eye. I am content. My life has been happy enough. Only this peaceful life. It was soon disrupted by Xie Chengfeng. He actually moved his residence right next to the Xue estate. Your child is in need of a tutor. Xie Changzhao was so furious he stomped around the house. Yet, he had to admit, if Xie Chengfeng were to take his child as a student, the boy's life would be exceptionally smooth. For the sake of the child, Xue Changzhao endured it. But Xie Chengfeng is far more cunning than him, always waiting outside just to happen to run into me. After it happened too many times, Xue Changzhao lost his temper and gave him a shove. Mingyu, please don't be angry. General Xue surely didn't mean to do it. It was all my fault for upsetting him. Xie Chengfeng played the victim right in front of me. Xie Changzhao was nearly driven mad. Eventually, Xue Changzhao simply learned his tricks. Whenever Xie Chengfeng acted aggrieved, he would start crying too. Fortunately, Xue Changzhao is easy to soothe. As for Xie Chengfeng, he can just soothe himself.